This is the Mend It Pass podcast with Chadwick Hayward, episode 20.
Welcome to menditpass.com. Let's get back to bed.
Hi, Path Menders. Thanks so much for tuning in to the 20th episode of the Mend It Pass podcast. This week, I am joined by Debra Van Duyne of Miss Daisy's Plant-Based Life. Debbie started her plant-based journey as a means to overcoming some health issues she was facing. Today, she shares her story of her journey so far, the highs and the lows she has faced, including her diagnosis with uterine cancer. To date, she has lost 80 pounds, is now cancer-free, and is optimistic and eager to continue her plant-based journey back to better. Hi, Debbie. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Chad. How are you?
I'm doing so well. It's great to have you on the show.
Great. It's so great to be here.
So your health journey towards plant-based started about 7 years ago, and you were having some minor health type things going on at that time. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. At that time, I was overweight. I had been overweight probably since my early 20s. I grew up as a very thin child, and when I hit my early 20s, I started to put on weight, and that just kind of grew over time. And I ended up having some issues in my early 20s with heart palpitations and things like that. But what really hit home to me at that time, 7 years ago, was I ended up having a blood clot in my leg, a superficial blood clot, but it scared me all the same. And so I decided at that time enough was enough, and I needed to find some sort of, and I didn't want to use the term diet, because previously from that point back, I had been on like every diet imaginable. So I was tired of that. I was tired of the merry-go-round. And so I hopped online and I was just looking for like the healthiest diet on the planet type deal. And I came across, the plant-based diet. And for a while I was looking up a lot of the raw gurus. And I was very, very interested in that. And so I tried that a little bit. But when you live in the north in the winter and things like that, it's kind of hard to sustain. So that wasn't working for me. So I did a little bit more searching, and I came across forks over knives, and that was life-changing for me.
Okay. So what specifically were you trying before you came across forks over knives?
Well, before forks over knives, I did on and off try the raw food diet, where I just basically ate all raw. But before that, I was on, for a lot of years, I was on and off every diet you can think of. Okay. I mean, the Atkins diet, the Cambridge diet, Weight Watchers, South Beach, low calorie restriction diet, high exercise, quite a few things.
Did you have any success with any of those?
I did. I did. The Atkins diet, I was successful, lost quite a bit of weight, but I also gained kidney stones. Very severe kidney stones. And the Cambridge diet, which is basically all liquid, and then you have a small salad and maybe a piece of meat at night, I ended up fainting. Weight Watchers, I was very successful on. But if you don't have that support, if you constantly have that support, it's very easy to go back and to your old ways, and you go back and you end up gaining weight. Low calorie restriction never worked because I was always hungry.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. So back to your experience with the raw food diet. It was really the unavailability of fresh raw food that kind of made you switch or consider switching. Yeah.
I mean, I still now I get quite a bit of raw food into my diet, because I still think that's probably one of the healthiest ways to get nutrition into you quickly, because they talk a lot about cooked foods not being so, it takes out some of the nutrition.
Yeah.
But I just find like Dr. McDougall was one of the first doctors out of Forks Over Knives that I really related to. I mean, I really felt like that was something I could follow and stick with. because I love potatoes. And, and some of the recipes that I went through, I felt like, hey, I can do this, and I can turn some of the foods that I actually love eating into a plant-based version. And so it worked really well for me.
Yeah, I think just to clarify, there are certain nutrients that are degraded by cooking, but there's also nutrients that are enhanced by cooking. For instance, I think tomatoes have lycopene, which is enhanced by the cooking process.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, so you watched Forks Over Knives, and you really were inspired by Dr. McDougall. So did your diet change immediately after that, or how did your transition go from there?
It did, but at that point, my husband wasn't on board, and he's at that point was he's a very heavy meat eater. And so he was not on board, and he also liked to eat out. And so that made it was more of a struggle for me to stay on. And so I was on and off probably the last 2 years before I officially said enough's enough.
Okay, so did he just not watch Forks Over Knives with you, or did he watch it and just didn't resonate with him, or what?
He did watch it. I just don't know if it really hit home to him at that point. I don't know. Personally, I think people come to a place in their life where they want, something in their life helps them along the way to accept what's happening with themselves. And he's diabetic as well. So he did eat some of the food that I prepared, but it was still a struggle because our life was so busy at that time. It was easier for us to grab something out than to cook at home. So it just made eating that way very, very difficult. And I was new into it as well. So, I think the only book I read was Dr. McDougall's The Starch Solution at that time. I didn't read anything else. And so I just know that when, you don't put yourself in a position to make it work, it can be very difficult, especially when you're coming from such a heavy standard American diet. And if your life is very, very busy, you have to prepare your food, and you have to make a way to make it work.
Yeah, unless you're grabbing raw fruit, convenient food, very much so is not healthy.
Yeah. Exactly. And
so your transition then was slow. What changed for you to switch so that you were 100% compliant? About
probably a year before the beginning of 2015, I was experiencing AFib, atrial fibrillation episodes where your heart would go into a very rapid beating. And your blood pressure would go high, and it would send me to the emergency room, where they would have to put an IV in and then give me small doses of a beta blocker to slow down my heart. I went to my cardiologist, and they did a bunch of tests, and he believed it was weight related and stress related.
Okay.
So at that time, I knew I had it, and I thought, okay, well, I am on and off the plant-based thing. So I kept kept researching, and I'd do really well for a while, and then I'd fall off the wagon for a week. And I was also battling depression and anxiety at the time, and so it was just one day, December 7th, my sister was moving. And she had asked for help. And so I went to her house and helped, and I went into AFib. And I thought, enough is enough. I'm so tired of this. And at that point, I was going into AFib probably, every couple of months. And I was very discouraged. So, and I just remember hearing what my cardiologist said is weight related, stress related, so I knew I had to work on those things. And so that day I had decided enough's enough, and I was going to go 100% plant-based, and I wasn't going to let anyone or anything deter me.
Okay.
And I didn't. And I was very successful. I lost 65 pounds in 5.5 months. I continued exercising because my cardiologist said to exercise. There was no risk. And so I just put myself all in, and I haven't looked back.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Let's
go back a little bit. You said in the meantime, like in 2015 at the beginning there, you did a lot of research. What did that look like? Like what were you searching? How did you find information?
Mostly the internet, but I did, like I said, I watched documentaries like The Forks Over Knives and Hungry for Change and things like that. I also read, I read Dr. McDougall's book, Starch Solution. Mostly online stuff that I was doing. I would like just devour videos from Dr. McDougall's webpage. And I would also, that would lead me to Dr. Esselstyn. And actually I reached out to Dr. Esselstyn, during that time, and he gave me some great advice. He called me, which I thought, wow, I felt special, because he took the time to actually, call me back after I emailed him. And so that was a great conversation I had with him.
That's incredible.
Yeah. He told me, one of the things that I needed to do because I had so much weight to lose, he said to stick with the plants and no processed foods, no flours, no sugars, and just, really, really stick with that.
Okay.
And at that time, that was a struggle for me. I was still plant-based, but I was still struggling with getting rid of the flours. Because one of the things I did when I transitioned was pizza was a big thing in our house. So I found a way to make a plant-based version of pizza, but I still was using flour. I was still using like whole wheat flour.
Yeah.
And so, that was one of the things he said that I needed to cut out. So that was a struggle for me until I found out I had cancer. And then it was still a little bit of a struggle, but I ended up seeing Dr. Campbell just recently, Dr. Thomas Campbell, which he's Dr. T. Colin Campbell's son. And he's a doctor in our area. And I actually went to see him, and he talked to me a little bit about a quick weight loss for my condition, for all my conditions that I've been dealing with. And he said the calorie density diet would be the best thing for me to work on getting the rest of my weight off. So that's what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks, and it's been going very, very well. I guess I just want to point out too that, like, for me, and I think there's probably a lot of people like me out there, where when you sometimes it takes an illness to kind of wake you up, and I think that's what it did for me. Even though I struggled through it while I was having AFib episodes and then the cancer and all of that. I feel like you have to come to some sort of place in your life where it's a do or die situation, and that's what it was for me.
I've said before that it has to be internal. No one can force you to change your diet or your lifestyle. It really has to be something that you really want, and it comes from within.
Yes, that's very true.
So going back a little bit, how did you find out that you had cancer?
Well, I have uterine cancer, and so I was only about 5 months into my 100% plant-based diet when I started in December of 2015, and so that April, probably the end of March, I started to bleed a little bit. And I just chalked it up to being either menopausal or just the fact that my hormones were changing because I changed my diet. So I didn't think too much about it, but then the bleeding started to get a little heavier, and it was a constant. It was like every day, nonstop. So I decided, I was, getting to the point where I knew April was where I was going to go to my gynecologist for my annual checkup. And so I made the appointment and went in to see her. And she did an examination, and she saw a mass, and she wasn't quite sure what it was, so she biopsied it. And then about a week or so later, I found out that it was cancer. And so then I was scheduled to see an oncologist about a week later, and then a week after that, I was ushered into surgery, and I had a complete hysterectomy.
Oh, wow.
So before that, though, which I want to kind of attribute to my diet, my surgery was on May 12th, and just a few days before my surgery, I ended up passing that mass. I just got up in the morning and went to the bathroom, and the mass was a size of a prune.
Oh, okay.
Like a medjool date, if you want to put it that way. It was about that size, and I, of course, freaked out, and had my husband come in, and it was the mass that my doctor had seen near my cervix.
Oh,
it
wow.
was like right at the edge of my uterus, and so I in my heart believe that had I not been plant-based and started that journey, that the stage that I was in could have been a lot worse. And I think the cancer could have spread a lot worse. And I realize that's just my thinking. It's not a medical professional telling me that, but that's what I believe in my heart anyway about that. But I ended up having the surgery. I healed fairly quickly, and I think the doctors were surprised that I healed so quickly as well. I was able to start my exercise regimen all over again. And then to kind of fast forward a little bit, I stayed on the plant-based diet. I struggled to lose because my body was still trying to heal. And they said that it could take up to a whole year to heal when you have that kind of surgery. So yeah. I ended up back I had a recurrence of the cancer. I had a 3-month checkup with my oncologist, and she saw a small, she called it a freckle-sized spot near the stitches. And of course I was devastated, and I thought, what am I doing wrong? There I was on the, doing plant-based, and I knew that because of the stress of the whole thing, I knew I was allowing a few things back in my diet that I shouldn't have.
Okay.
Like a cookie here and there with some sugar, and any cancer patient knows that you shouldn't have sugar.
Yeah.
And so I would be letting some things, and even when I think about it, there were some things that I was doing right that were compliant that was not good for cancer patients.
Like what?
Well, the sugar, for one. I was also drinking a lot of smoothies. And one of the things that Dr. Campbell enlightened me on about smoothies is that, it breaks down the cellular wall of the food that's there, and it creates more of a high content of sugar. So when you're drinking it as opposed to chewing your food, it just goes right in, and your body reacts to it like it's sugar.
Yeah, you can definitely have an elevated glucose response, especially if your smoothies are a high concentration of fruit. You get less of that response if it's more of a high concentration of greens, I think.
Yes.
And I do believe Dr. Greger has a few videos on this as well, that like if the fruit that you put in there are berries, or if you eat bananas regularly, it kind of mutes that glucose response. But I can understand that response being something you'd want to be cognizant of.
Yes. And, I thought too that like my smoothies, I tried to put in as many greens as I did the fruits, so that they would balance each other out. But I'm not so sure that was the right way to go for me, by the advice of Dr. Campbell anyway.
Yeah. So were you no salt and no oil and that kind of thing at that time, or?
No oil throughout this whole journey, no oil at all. But I did end up, that was one of the foods that I started to incorporate back into my diet. Only, I wouldn't be as strict on it. Like if I went to Subway and had a veggie sub, I knew that not their sub, but their wraps. I would have a wrap, but I knew that their tortilla wrap had oil in it, that type of thing. So I would let little things like that kind of creep back in. Okay.
And so was that more of a wake-up call then, I guess, when the recurrence happened, or did that change your behavior at that time?
Yes, it did. It sure did. Because I think that, when you're ill, I think you have to be serious about your diet and your lifestyle changes. And, this is coming from a background where I'm the type of person, I'm an emotional eater. So it didn't matter my emotions. I wanted to eat. And that's how I grew to be 332 pounds in the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then that coupled with depression and anxiety, I was kind of a mess. And so food was my comfort. Food was, what I turned to. And I'm not a great cook. So I'm more of a simplistic person. I like things simple. Like I would rather grab an apple an orange and maybe make some oatmeal. Or if I'm out, I would grab something out at a restaurant instead of, cooking home cooked meals. My husband's the cook, but at that point, he liked the oil and he liked the meat and he liked the cheese and
Yeah.
So
did he change eventually, or?
He did. Yeah, he did. And he's still not 100% compliant. I mean, there's still a few things. He's more of a slow transitioner, but he has done wonders. He's eliminated all meat from his diet, and cheese. He struggles a little bit with the sugar aspect, a little bit. Like if he has oatmeal or something, he wants to put like coconut sugar on it or something.
Okay.
Where I don't do that. And, but yeah, he's doing very well.
That's great. So when did he really get on board with you?
He got on board when I did last year, in December.
Okay.
It's December of 2015. And, but he didn't go over 100% like I did. He still held on to some things. He slowly gave coffee creamer would be one, he still drinks coffee. And so he just held on to those things, and he's still struggling with that a little bit, but I would say, if I was to give him any sort of percentage, he's about 95%
okay.
plant-based. Yeah.
And so did you find that easier when he started to get more compliant as well? Did it make it easier for you to stay compliant?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a struggle when you have someone in your home that's eating differently. Unless you come to that place in yourself where you say to yourself, there's nothing that's going to stop me like I did. It's going to be a struggle. It is a struggle when you live with someone that eats different from you.
Yeah. So what are some strategies that you use to help keep yourself on track?
I kept things very simple. I ate a lot of the same foods. And I know that doesn't work for everyone because there are a lot of people that like variety. For me, I'm simple. So I just, if I found that if I kept it simple, I was able to stick to it more. And the other thing too is some of the foods that I used to like that I used to like go out and order, be Chinese or pizza, and even Italian. I found ways to cook them home with no oil and I make my own homemade sauce now. I never did that before. My homemade tomato sauce. I never did that before. I found ways to make scalloped potatoes without having milk product in it and or any kind of meat in it. I found out how to make a roux without milk. So there were a lot of those things that I did. And I think that really helps when you can find foods that you love and just change them to a plant-based version. Yeah,
then you're not really going that far. You're just adapting what you're used to.
Yeah, and I think I think it helps for transition as well. Like my sister, I have two sisters who are obese, and they're both diabetic, and so I am trying to help them with their journey, and it is a challenge because my one sister she has two autistic sons. And her husband he has diabetes and he likes a lot of sweets and things like that. So her whole house and her whole dynamic in her home revolves around her family, and she has to cook for them. And so she has high stress because of her two autistic sons. And, there's just a lot going on in her home. So, she struggles with staying compliant. And so just showing her that there are foods that you can make that can taste just as good as your old version, the standard American diet version, I think is eye-opening for her, and she loves that. Okay.
And do you find that as time goes, they're becoming more and more compliant, or?
Yeah. My sister with the two sons, she struggles still, but she does try. She's kind of in that transition period where I was, where she would hop on and then she would find herself falling off, and then she would run, hop on and then find herself falling off again. So both sisters are doing that right now. But I just keep trying to encourage them and show them recipes and things that I've done and it's funny because my sister just put online the other day that she made my bean burgers that I make. And she was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how good they are. So she loves it. And then her husband, she also made scalloped potatoes. And her husband is like, these are the best scalloped potatoes I've ever had, So,
oh, that's awesome.
So she's learning. She's learning that she can do this. And I think that's what this is all about, really.
I agree. I think a lot of people have that initial on and off again during the transition, and unless it's like a dire prognosis that people have, then
yes.
sometimes they can do the 100% switch overnight. But in a lot of cases, it's a slow transition, and you're on board and then you slowly fall off, and then it's usually information based, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You watch another documentary, or you read a book, or even some videos like on nutritionfacts.org, and that excites you to be compliant again.
Yes.
And then 2 weeks pass and you haven't watched anything, and you're slowly letting things slip in again until you get that extra shot of information that kind of gets you back on board. And so it's important to, like you said, it's a journey. So
yes.
It's important to remember that it's a journey, and to never stop trying to learn more on your journey and figure out ways to improve your healthiness, because there's always room for improvement for yes. the vast majority of people. So,
oh, absolutely. I agree.
And so I guess once you had your recurrence, what was your diet and exercise regime like after that?
Right after the occurrence, it's really strange because just before I found out I had cancer back in May, I came across a gentleman on YouTube called Chris Beat Cancer. Chris Wark, he's a cancer survivor. He had colon cancer at the age of 26, and he's a 12-year survivor. And he's done videos, and he's interviewed people who have healed their cancer naturally. And he's just a great incentive for me. And he put together this health module to kind of walk you through what he did to cure his cancer. And so right away after I found out I had the recurrence, I got on his website because I remembered him. And I got on his website and I saw that he had done this coaching program online for people who wanted to be a part of that. And so I immediately ordered it. And I started on juicing. I started carrot juicing. I stuck with my smoothies. I tried to add more greens as opposed to fruits. And supplementation as well. Some of the recommended supplementation that he recommended, I started doing. And so as far as like my food choices, I stayed pretty much the same. I still ate potatoes and I still ate pasta in small amounts, but I would try to eat more vegetables and fruits than anything else.
Okay. And did your exercise regime change?
Oh, yes. No, it didn't change. I'm a walker, and I run every now and then, but I'm not like an avid runner. Most of my exercise is walking, and it's not like a leisure walk. It's a good arm pumping walk. That's what I do. And I do anywhere from 2 to 5 miles a day, depending on the day and my schedule.
Okay.
And I still do that now. I did it then, and I still do it now. So that didn't change.
Okay. And did you find that helped your mood, or?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's definitely a mood booster. Absolutely. And, the other thing too is, and I was just talking to my husband about this recently, in the past when I was on again, off again, and I had so much weight to lose, I battled depression and anxiety. I would have anxiety attacks just sitting watching TV, and they would just come on me, and the depression as well, where I didn't want to go out of my house, and, I didn't want to see people. I wasn't very social. A lot of it, if my husband wanted to go out and get something to eat, I would say, let's order it and eat in the car. Let's just go down by the lake. I didn't want to see people. And so since I've been doing this, I've lost about 80 pounds. And so since I've been doing this, have no signs of depression, and the anxiety only came back a little tiny bit because of the cancer, because of my anxiety with the whole cancer thing.
Okay.
But I'm even handling that as well. But the impressive thing is just that the depression is like gone. It's lifted.
And so when you say started this, I'm assuming you mean 100% compliance in December 2015.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So you didn't see an improvement in your mood and anxiety during that transitioning period where you were less compliant, or?
A little bit, but I would have to say my less compliant, I was more off the wagon than I was on. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of improvement in that, and I think because I knew it was a personal thing, because I knew I was falling off, and I'd get mad at myself for falling off, so then that would trigger depression as well. So
yeah, it's a terrible cycle.
It is. It is.
And so I guess what has your progress been since May then, since your recurrence?
She did the biopsy and it came back cancer. I just went to the doctor. I went to gynecology yesterday, and they see no lesions. There's no lesions or any kind of abnormality.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh my goodness. You don't even know how awesome I felt.
Congratulations.
Hearing that. Thank you so much. It just gives me hope that, that this way of eating, this lifestyle change, it's not just about what you eat. It's, it really is about a whole lifestyle change. Forgiveness is huge. I held a lot of grudges throughout the years, and even with myself, I didn't love myself at all. So just working toward being at that place where I could actually say I love myself, was huge for me, just very huge for me. And I think it's so healing as well. So it's definitely a lifestyle change. It's not just what you eat. It's, it's more than that.
That totally makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Well, because if you are holding grudges, or if you don't like yourself, which is prerequisite to depression in a lot of cases, that's bound to increase your stress levels, which then means there's more cortisol flowing through your blood, which is not good for the body, right? So
exactly.
Yeah, it is a whole body approach, whole food, whole body.
Yes, it sure is.
So when did you get in contact with Dr. Campbell then? You said it was within the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I felt like I was not moving anywhere as far as weight loss.
Okay.
I was struggling getting weight off. I would gain 5 pounds, lose 5 pounds, or it'd stay the same. And so, and I didn't know, what was going on. I knew that every time I'd gone to see the doctor or a doctor, especially oncology likes to tell you you're going to die. Irregardless of what they just do.
We all will eventually, but hopefully a lot later than sooner.
Yeah. But it's unfortunate that, and I'm not saying all of them, but my doctor in particular, I've went through 2 oncologists, and they both say if I don't do traditional treatment, I'm going to die, and, or conventional treatment, sorry. And so, that's a high stressor for me, where I would be 3 days in a heap. I'd cry and be unsure, and, what am I doing wrong, and all of that. And so it was very, very stressful. So again, I found myself having a cookie here and there, or I would just, I tell my husband, just order pizza. I do not feel like cooking tonight. He worked late. He doesn't want to, and we would order pizza with veggies on top, but it would still have light cheese on it. So there are little things like that still happened and it didn't happen often, but it got to the point where it was halting my progress in weight loss. And I knew in the back of my mind as well that it was things that I should not be eating because of the cancer.
Yeah.
Or even just, it's not even allowed for being plant-based, you know what I mean? So it's just like, that was always in the back of my mind, but But with cancer being in the forefront, I knew that I wasn't supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was struggling with stress and the anxiety of my doctors telling me that if I didn't do, if I don't do conventional treatment, I'm going to die. And so I just,
Well, it just goes to show how strong that addiction to food is, really, right? Because
exactly,
you stress that you're not healthy, and that the food is a big part of that. But despite that knowledge, your body tries to get you to cheat on what you're eating.
Yes.
Which is the opposite of what you need. So it's your biology is working against you in that case.
Right. Exactly.
So you reached out to Dr. Campbell, and
I did. I reached out to Dr. Campbell, and at that point, I knew Dr. Campbell doesn't see he doesn't practice primary care anymore. So, and I knew that he wasn't doing that, but he is a part of the U of R nutrition program that they have there. And so what him and his wife do is they counsel people who want to change their diet and their health by eating plant-based.
Okay.
So they counsel the individuals that want to see him. So I called the office thinking that I wasn't going to get anywhere, but found out that he would see me. So I went to see him, and it was an eye opener, to say the least. He pointed out to me, how food actually works in the body. And he, it was funny because he kept saying, I'm probably telling you everything you already know, which is kind of true. I mean, there were some things that he was saying, so I already knew because I, had read books and done research and things like that. But the one thing that he did talk about was the calorie density. And how you can fill up on fruits and vegetables at lower, you can actually eat more of them at lower caloric, the lower caloric density than say, breads, which are still compliant. Whole wheat bread and pasta and things like that are compliant, but there's more calories to those per pound.
Yeah. It's more the health quotient like Dr. Furman has, where health is the nutrients divided by the number of calories.
Yeah.
Right? So you're trying to increase the amount of nutrients you get by minimizing the number of calories.
Yeah. So, and that's going very well for me. I'm doing a journal through it. I go back to see him. We did a 4-week period. So I go back to him in about 3 weeks, and just to kind of see where I'm at. And it's funny because I wrote in my journal that I missed my smoothies because I felt like I was getting like more greens in, and I was like having it's really eye-opening, to be truthful, because I'm having a more difficult time trying to get greens in by eating them than I did when I was just throwing it into a smoothie, you know?
No, I totally relate. That's how I get a majority of my greens as well. Like I'll often, like if I'm making a soup, then there's always like a cruciferous, like a cabbage or something as a big part of that soup. But outside of that, like kale is essentially like every now and then we'll steam a pound of kale and have it for supper, but the vast majority of the time it's in the smoothie. So it's so much easier. Like, and what takes you 10 minutes to drink a liter of smoothie will take you an hour to eat, right?
It's true. It's true. I made this humongous salad. I think I had it in my bowl, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to see how many cups this is. So I took it out of the bowl, I had this big 4-cupper. And so I'm like, and I did the 4 cups. I'm like, oh my goodness, I have more here that I've got to measure. It ended up being 7 cups of, and this is just, I had like romaine and I had all different kinds of vegetables in it. Yeah. And I thought, wow, 7 cups is going to take me forever to eat. It took me 45 minutes to eat that.
Right. Right. And it's not just going to be lettuce, right? Like you're going to want other things on it. So that,
yeah, absolutely. There's all kinds of different vegetables in it. And it's just like, wow. And then of course your jaw gets a little tired. It's
absolutely.
Like, I miss my smoothie.
Yeah. No, I don't know if I could, obviously I could give it up if I had to, but I definitely enjoy, like, I stuff so much green into my smoothies. Like it's literally like I'm pushing my hand down and like packing it in there. So
what I did. I even made a couple of videos on that. So you got to pack that spinach in, get it right in there.
Get it in. Yeah. Yeah. I think, Dr. Brooke Goldner, she really advocates for smoothies, and it's, her general recipe is always flax seeds or chia seeds, but preferred flax, and then 75% green and 25% fruit. And so that's kind of, when I heard that, I was like, that's awesome. Cause that's kind of what mine looked like originally.
Yeah.
So that was kind of helpful for me. But so I understand that he doesn't, Dr. Campbell doesn't recommend smoothies, and I get why he doesn't, especially for people with end stage diseases or advanced diseases. What does he recommend? Like what does your day look like on his program now?
Well, we're focusing on weight loss for me, not focusing so much on the cancer.
Okay.
Because he basically he can't say that he knows that this way of eating is going to help me considerably, but as an MD, he can't say that it's going to heal me.
Of course.
So, and I understand that. I totally, agree with what his position is. So that's not that. So we decided, that we're going to focus on getting the rest of my weight off. Like I said, I've lost 80 pounds. I have about 100 left to lose. And, people look at me and say, there's no way you have 100 to lose. There's just absolutely no way. But I do. I mean, I do have 100 pounds to lose. So, and I know that it's important to get that off and as quickly as possible because of the type of cancer that I have. And, so he's working with me on that. And like I said, he feels if I stick as close to the fruits and vegetables as opposed to the grain, as opposed to, the flours and the sugars.
Yeah.
I can have grains that are like unprocessed stuff like quinoa and some rice and oatmeal. But for the most part, he wants me to stick with, like sweet potatoes and squash and your green vegetables and, all the different colors that you have in vegetable world and fruits. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. It's so easy to be misled by, oil that's added to say bread, right? It's so easy to not know that there's a tablespoon of oil in a slice of bread, like without looking at the ingredients or without, well, actually you can't even just look at the ingredients and know that. Like you would have to calculate how much oil is in per gram essentially. And you basically need a degree in math to figure out exactly how much oil is in your individual slice. Right. And, like when you look at something like a can of pop and you can look online and see how much sugar it fills in a baggie in that can of pop. Like looking at that can of pop, your brain doesn't see that level of sugar. Right. And it's the same thing for oil. So it's so easy for you to think you're doing okay when in fact you're doing so poorly because you're eating those processed foods. And oil is in everything.
It is. It really is.
Essentially.
And I'm an avid label reader. Before I right now I'm not eating anything processed. But before, when I was more compliant, I did eat some processed stuff. Always checking the label, so for oil and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's in there. It's everywhere.
Yeah, my rule now is if they've added oil to the product, I just don't buy it. And it's hard because it is hard. It takes some time to make your own, let's say, Tostito chips, right? And I've made them once because it is so time consuming. So like I'll do it where I'll go to the grocery store and you're walking down the aisle. It's like, oh man, I made my own salsa. I'd love to have Tostito chips to put it in there. And then I'll go and I'll like look at the back of every single bag. And even though I really want them, because again, it's my addiction telling me that I want this chip. If they have oil, that's my rule. I've established my rule that if it has oil, I can't get it. So I always walk away without having those chips. And I find it's so much easier to be compliant if you make those rules for yourself, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, like I'm not a person, the slippery slope will get me every time. So I have to establish a clear line in the sand.
Yep, I agree. Me too.
So we're running out of time here. If I usually ask my guests if they had one piece of advice to give someone that is transitioning or thinking about transitioning, what would it be?
I would say to stick with it, and don't beat yourself up. It's so easy to fall off the wagon and just say, I give up, throw up your hands and say, forget it, it's not working for me. But the more you do it, it becomes a habit. And so I would just say, stick with it. If you fall off, get back on. If you have a slice of pizza, have that slice of pizza. Don't beat yourself up. The next meal, you start over. Don't say I had a slice of pizza, so I might as well just have, a burger tonight for dinner and then a bag of M&Ms. No, you don't do that. You have your pizza, you had it. It's water under the bridge. Move on. Get back on the wagon and have a compliant meal. It's the best advice I could give someone. It's the more you make it a habit, the easier it becomes.
I really like that. It's so true, where you don't want to allow the forgiveness of yourself to become an excuse for not being compliant.
Yes.
But at the same time, if you have slipped up, if you have fallen to pressure, it's not, you can't use that as a scapegoat to write off the rest of the day.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, you're only as good as your next choice.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so true.
None of us can change the past, so we have to look to the future. And there's no sense crying over spilled milk, to use the terrible, because that's actually something to be happy about.
I agree. Definitely.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thank you so much. I enjoyed this. Good luck on your journey, and I wish you nothing but the best of health. Thank you, Chadwick. I heartfelt that we had this conversation. I appreciate it so much. Oh, thank you for your time. Well, that's all for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Mend It Paths podcast with Chadwick Hayward at www.menditpaths.com. If you haven't already done so, please like our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/menditpaths. See you all next time. Visit menditpaths.com and get back to bed.